Let's go ahead and search for Google Cloud. Okay, so we have cloud.google.com. I already have a couple of accounts with Google Cloud, but for this video what I will do, I will create a new account. I have already created a new email ID, and I will just start showing you how to set everything from scratch. You could see that for my current user it shows go to console, which means I already have a console, but I have created a new account. Let us start by setting it up. So my new account name is mouseevents.youtube@gmail.com. So let's start with get started for free. It shows my email ID and then the country where I am. Let's give it is a startup or something small. I have read. I don't wish to receive email updates. And that's it. When you do registration for the first time, it's giving you $300 credit, which you can use. I believe. Okay, now it is spent over the next 90 days. Yearly it used to be spent over 1 year. Let's find. Okay, here we go. Let us give some names here. I will say this is business name is Mouse Events YouTube. Now the reason for a card number is that Google, when you sign up, gives you $300 free credit. So there is a possibility people can create multiple accounts like what I'm doing now with different email IDs. So to avoid that misuse, they need a card number with valid details. But the money will not be debited. You can always cancel your credit card at a later stage. I will just enter my credit card details. Okay, so the details are here. I will start my free trial. So now that we have created or activated our account with Google Cloud Console, I created a new project. Initially it was my first project or something. I just checked some settings and then I deleted it. I created a new project, but in your case you don't have to do that. If you want to create a new project, you can create it. First and foremost thing, you go inside your APIs and services, just open it up. What is the end goal or the end objective that we are expecting from this whole operation? We are trying to register our client with the Google server. That is our goal here. That's what we are trying to see. And what is the result that we are expecting? After the registration, the Google server should give us with a client ID and then a client secret. So this is what we need. So we can directly go to the credentials and we can start requesting for a credential. But what happens? To ask for a credential itself, let's see. To open up a client ID, you must first configure your consent screen. So there are a couple of steps which are required to achieve your end results. Since I already know what are the steps required, I can directly go ahead and set up the library consent screen, set up the APIs, but I don't want to do that because I want you also to understand how everything is done step by step. So go into your credentials. If you already have a consent screen, you will not be seeing this. But if you don't have a consent screen, it will ask you to configure the consent screen. Consent screen is nothing but when you open up your application, it will show you a page from Google which says, hey, this application, like for instance, whatever name that we are going to give, is trying to access your this scope, 2 this scope, 3 this scope, whatever we discussed here. So the login page, whatever we are going to show to the user, we need to define it here. There are two things, internal and external. Internal is when your organization itself is using their email service with Google, but I don't think we need that. External is when you expect someone else with their Gmail ID like abc123@gmail.com to log into your application. So let's go with external. You would see that the external application itself This is how it will be. Sign in with Google, and then app name, whatever the name that you're going to give, wants to access your Google account, and select what app can access. So basically the scopes that we'll give, make sure you trust the app name, blah 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 blah. And here there is one important thing now. When we are dealing with external application, you need to publish it so that external users can make use of it. Unless you publish, it will be a test application. So let us just go ahead and give some names. We call it as YouTube desktop demo app. It's a long name, but still. And support email, I created this email itself, as I said before, mouse.events.it@gmail.com, only for preparing this video. And logo, I'm not going to add any logo at present, and there is no email pages for this. Of course, there is an email. I purchased domain mouse.events. And developer address, I will give the same. What it says, it should begin with the schema, HTTP. Okay, we have now okay, we don't need this one, then it will be expecting us to give the domain. So save and continue. The consent page is done. Then we need to give the scopes. How do you know the scopes? So we have already seen here, in first step we will be defining the scopes. Like scope means whether the user will be able to access your photo or images or files. Those are the scopes that your application will have access to. Where can I find the scopes? You see, there are something called add or remove scopes. Let's open it up. Currently there are 25 scopes. What are they? There are by default basic scopes which are not relevant to or related to any API by default. These are all basic scopes. And then I have some BigQuery scopes, cloud logging scopes, and different scopes. If you want to enable more scopes, like if you want to enable YouTube scopes, Google Drive scopes, go to your Google API library, which is here, enabled API libraries. When you click this, you will obviously go here. So I will directly open it up in a separate page. You might have already noticed we have only 25 scopes. Let's go here, search for some scopes. And where can I search for scopes? Enable APIs and scopes. Yeah, here. Let me search for YouTube. So it should give me all the YouTube API. So when this is enabled, then our application can, it's not like it will have, it can have these scopes provided if you need to add it. Or let us say we need a Google Drive scope. I will just say I will add a Google Drive scope. Enable the scope. Once the scope itself is enabled, I can go back here, refresh the page. It is still enabling, but let me assume that it is already done. Okay, go to my next page. Add or remove scopes. Now instead of 25 we have 41, which means we have Google Drive scopes also added to our list of enabled APIs and scopes. This is what we need. But what we are going to do, for this demo we are only going to give basic scopes, and which are non-sensitive scopes, email ID and then the profile. That's it. That's more than enough for us. Update, and these two scopes are now added here. So these are the two scopes using which your application can access. You can always go back here, edit and add more scopes, but at present we are limiting it to only two scopes, because our main idea is just to connect to Google API, and then once the authorization is complete, we are going to use that as a login information, like authenticating. Save and continue. So now, as I said before in the first page, this is a test application. So when it is set for testing, only limited number of users can use. So you can have up to 100. I will add a couple of my email IDs. I have something called frontend.frenzy.youtube@gmail.com, something that I created a few minutes back. mouse.events.youtube@gmail.com. These two are enough, which means that only with this two email IDs, this whole application could be accessed. Add it. Did it add or did it add? Add it. Save and continue. Okay, now our application consent screen is created. Go back to the dashboard. Where were we first? We were in the credentials. Go back to the credentials. We were trying to create credentials, and it was saying that we need to set up our art screen. Now that the credential itself is art screen itself is set up, go ahead and create the credentials. Just see here, there are different items. Just go with OAuth Client ID, because that's what we need. We need a client ID and a secret. For this, we will take desktop app. There won't be much difference between them all. Almost everything will be the same. And I will show something after we create this credential ID. I will go ahead and show something where you can see what is the difference between all these things. But currently, let's go with desktop app and give it a name called YouTube Desktop. YouTube Desktop Creator. Remember, your secret should be a secret. The reason why I'm displaying it in this YouTube video is because I will be deleting this email ID, I will be deleting this whole account itself, and all these applications, whatever we are showing here, I will be deleting it. So that's the reason why I'm showing it here. But in your case, the secret should be a secret, and client ID is not that much of a secret. You can store it in your application. Now I will open up a notepad, copy the ID so that we can use it later. Copy the secret. The secret is here, ID is here. This is very important. I repeat again, secret should be a secret. Now the reason why I'm showing is this will be deleted. I will, after the video is done, I will select and I will delete this client ID itself. So that's it. We are now done with creating an user client ID and then a client secret. Now what is needed? So once we know that we need to make a request with a certain scope. We already set the scope, we already set the login page. We also have the client ID and then the client secret. Now what is missing? We know that we need to make a request to Google server, but where? Where do we need to make the request? Where is the endpoint? What is the API? We don't know all these things. So you need to go to something called, you can search here itself, from here itself you can search. You can search for authentication or authorization policies. Authorization policies. If it doesn't work, now these are not something that we need because we are still in the Google Cloud Console. I will suggest there are two ways how we can reach the authorization policies of Google. One, you can search directly here in Google URL, or you can go to developers.google.com. But I would suggest not going to developers.google.com, because tomorrow this might itself be changing, but there is no guarantee that this domain itself will be retained. Let's search here, authorization policies. Okay, OAuth 2 policies, authorization pages is here, and comply with policies here. Open it up. This is what we need. So now that we know reached this policies page, our end goal is to look into how to access Google API for mobile and desktop. But before we reach there, I will quickly go through all the items which are available here. Overview. This will eventually show all the informations. What is the need for access token? If you remember from the previous section, at the end of the previous section, we said that there is a website from RFC where you can go ahead and read about OAuth 2. Exactly the same. They will here also they are trying to explain about the OAuth 2 policies, but how the OAuth 2 is implemented in Google Console or Google Cloud. That's what they are explaining here. You can go ahead and see the different scenarios for web applications. What is the process like? This is the same thing that we discussed. Like we request and then we show the con, and then we have the authorization code, exchange token response is nothing but your access token, and then you make the call. And for installed applications, what is the procedure? So different procedures for different devices. So this is the limited input device, which means the devices which does not have access to browsers, like a gaming console or video camera or printers. They do not have access to browser. So you basically do everything, and the browser will open on a separate device and you do the authorization. So these are the things that will be explained in this page. You can spend some time to understand everything. I will close this now. This is our end goal. We need to understand how the OAuth 2 works for desktop and mobile apps. What do they say? So let's go down here, go further down. So obtaining the token. So this is what we need. First, what they say is we need to generate a code verifier and a challenge, and this is not mandatory. Verifying, creating a code verifier and challenge is not mandatory. How do I know that this is not mandatory? Because it is mentioned below. We will get back to that shortly. But this step you can skip. It's not as of today. It is not mandatory. Maybe tomorrow they can make it mandatory one. But get down here. Step 2, send a request to Google OAuth 2 server. This is what we are looking at here. Sending a request from your client application to the server. We need to send the first request. So this is the URL for using which they are expecting us to send. Let me say, first let us write some names here. Client ID, and this one is client secret, and then we have an URL. Which is for request URL. Okay, and what else you have? For the request URL, there are set time parameters which are mandatory. So before that, just see what they are saying here. To this URL, you need to make a get request. How do I know that it is a get request? Because nowhere they mentioned it is a post request, and the following are query string parameters. So obviously I assume that it is a get request, and it is a query string parameter. What is a query string parameter? You could see from any of your requests here. Okay, you see anything after the question mark is your query string parameter. So the parameter name is auth user, value is 3. Parameter name is project, value is YT demo something blah blah blah. So here client ID after the question mark, after come on, why are you doing this to me? Okay, after this auth we will be having something like this. After this auth we will be having something like question mark, client ID is equal to this client ID, and then client secret is equal to this client secret, and then it will go on forever. So this is what we need to do. And these things can be URL encoded. URL encoded means it's a percent encoded. So basically dollar symbol will be %5e, and at symbol will be %40, something like that. But you can always do that at a later stage. What else is here? You need to have a redirect URI. You need to provide this is required, mandatory. You need to provide a redirect URI. You need to provide a client ID, and then what else is there? You need to provide a response type. Just what is a response type? You see here they are mentioned clearly that the value is set to code for install. So the value default, it should always be code. And then the scope, which is a space limited list of scopes. As we have already seen before, scope means what are the things that the user can access. Now where can I find the scopes? It is here, OAuth 2.0 scopes. Let's go here and see. Basically these are all the URL endpoints. These are the scopes that we need to have access to. Okay, we now know the scope, and then these are all not mandatory. These are all recommended, challenge, state, blah 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 blah. We don't need to worry about it. After we are done with this request, if we make this request through your URL endpoint, what you will get? You will get some kind of user login page, and then you will log into the page. And after the login is done, if we go up, you are providing it with a redirect URI, right? This redirect URI should be a valid one. It could be in your local host, it could be in any of your server, wherever it is, because after the authorization is done, the Google server will send the next stage, which is your grant token or the access token, or what, not the access token, which is the temporary token, the grant token, to this redirect URI. You need to take that. So this is something like this. The grant info is what you will be receiving to your redirect URI. And after that, the next step is you need to again send this grant info to the user for exchanging it as an access token. So basically we have one URL, which is the request URL, and we need one more URL, which is the grant info URL, which is nothing but get down. Here, exchange the authorization code for refresh and access token. So this is the URL which you will use for step number 5. Let us store this also. Exchange URL, or you can call it as access token URL. This one requires client ID, client secret. Just see here. This is a post request because they have clearly said it is a post request. So when you make a post, and this is what content type is form URL encoded, which means the same this one, the same like this, like auth user is equal to 3, ampersand project is equal to blah blah blah. But instead of putting that in the query, you will be putting that in the body of the request, and it will go as it will be posted. So that's what X form URL encoded, which is an URL encoded, same like here, but instead of the query, it will be posted in your body. So you post it in your body, and this will return back to you your access token, something like this: access token, expire, refresh token. That's it. So this is the whole idea behind doing all these things. So now that we have a little bit idea about how it works, now what I will do, I will stop here, and then I will open up a C# console application, and then we will first make these calls. We will first make let's also copy the scopes here. That's why we opened it up. There are so many scopes here, but for these scopes you need to enable the APIs. You remember here in the enable the API services, we need to enable different APIs so that our scopes will be accessible. So those scopes will be, if we go down and search for something called everything is Google, right? Okay, go down, and this in the header side, search for Google. Okay, the Google, and it will be Google Cloud. Okay, sorry, it's not Google Cloud, it is Google OAuth 2. So these two are the by default access scope which we have provided before, which does not need any kind of APIs to be enabled. But for other items like Google Drive or YouTube, you need to enable the API. But if you remember, we did not enable any APIs. So that's it. Now what I will do, I will go ahead and open up a API tester. There are several API testers, API tester platforms available in the market. What I will use is, I will use Postman. This is a small desktop application. You can install this application, download and install it. But now the step, whatever we are going to see now, are purely optional. You don't even need to do them, because anyway we will do these steps again while we are building the application. But the reason why I am trying to do these steps now is to ensure that our application, our setup, whatever we have created, the credentials, the consent, with everything, before we begin the application, before we begin building the application, I just want to ensure that we are able to access it. I'm just trying to make sure that the APIs are working and fine without any issues. And then while building the application, if I face any issues, then I will know that the problem is not with the API, but with my application itself, and I can focus on fixing my application. That's the reason why I need to first test my API. There are so many applications available. Postman is there, and if you go for Postman alternatives, you can find something called Nightingale, or I don't remember the name. Yeah, Insomnia is there, Nightingale is there, and something from Telerik will also be there. So many things. It's totally up to you which you want to use. I will go ahead with Postman. Remember, as I said before, this is purely optional. We are only trying to test if your API is working or not. Postman itself comes with a very good OAuth 2 handler. So I will go to the authorization here. Like what I did is, I just opened it up. When I selected it, it opened me the collection itself. In the collection, I am setting up OAuth 2. I could see that there is some header prefix. These are all by default. Let it all be here. And if you go down, there is something called configure options, configure new access token. And here what I will do, I will give a name and I will say demo token, and authorization code, because we are not looking at passwords, credentials. These are all the different grant types. We will look into the grant types at a later point or in another video, but currently we know that let it be here. We go here, and we know that the response type is going to be code, which means it is an authorization code grant, and callback URL needs to be there. Auth URL, we already know the auth URL, which is, why my page is here, this is my request URL, is nothing but my auth URL. Okay, and then access token URL, this is my access token URL, and client ID. As I have said, this client ID I will delete it later, and your secret should be a secret, so please make sure you save your secret somewhere and not accessible to others. And after that, a scope is here. We already decided what are the scopes. See, remember, the scopes are space delimited, multiple space delimited values. So it is what's said here as well, space delimited. So between two scopes you need to give what? A space, not comma delimited but space delimited. So there is a space between these two. I copy them all, minimize, put it here, and that's it. I did not give callback URL, which is nothing but my redirect URI, and scope is there, response type is there, and client ID is there. Why did I put secret if it is not required? Because we are merging two items here. We are merging in Postman. In Postman, we are merging this step number 5, sending the request, and we are also merging the grant info. That's the reason why we have secret and also the other things. But remember, redirect URI is very mandatory, very important. And what is a redirect URI? As I have said before, redirect URI is something where after the user enters his username password, at this point, in point number 3, after the user enters username password, the grant info will be returned back to the application to the redirect URI which we have specified. So redirect URI should be defined by us. If you have a server, you can define it, or if you have a local host server or a port which is listening, you can define that. We will define that while we are building the WPF application, but currently I will just give some dummy values, HTTP localhost, and I will say that it is running at 8800, which is not running anywhere, API auth. So this is not a valid one, this is not running anywhere. I just gave it because I will show you something. If I don't give this, let's say I start with something like google.com. If I don't give a valid callback URL and then I try to access a new token, requested URL was not found on the server. That's all we know. Here, you see, even the URL is wrong. This one, I didn't put auth. After v2, I didn't put the h here, auth. So now if I go, redirect URI mismatch, because the redirect URI is wrong. That's the reason why it says redirect URI mismatch. If I give some random dummy values, then it should be working fine. So now it comes back with me. Why it's showing me in Arabic? Because I am located in Middle East. I am staying in Dubai. That's the reason why it's showing in Arabic. But in your case, when we are building up, in your case, you should be showing the geographical location where you are residing from. But when we are building the application, we have the option to change this. We have the option to change the language which we are looking at. But currently, you can also change the language from here. So that's it. What I will do now, I will try to use, I don't remember the password of the applications that I created, but you, if we go back to our API services, we know that we have only given this two email IDs. If I try to access it from any other email ID, it will not work. It will say that we are not authorized. So I will just try with this one. I don't remember the password, so I will just try to put something. I hope this is correct. Okay, authorized. So what it says, YT desktop demo app. Let's go back here. The name is coming from here. The YT desktop demo app wants to access your Google account. So this is what we are showing in the login page here. So here, instead of YT demo desktop app, your application name will be available. And also, if you would have remembered, I did not add the logo when it was asking me. It was when I was editing it, it was asking for the logo to be added. I did not add it. In case you added the logo, your logo will be visible here. Your account email is here. This will allow the application to. These are the access that scope that we have registered. If you remember here, we register only 2 scopes, which are nothing but getting the email, getting the profile. That's what it says. Associate with your personal info, see your personal info, including any personal info you have made publicly available, and see your primary Google address. That's it. So these are the very basic bare minimum things, not sensitive, nothing will be affected. So allow this, and after allow, authentication is complete. Now I will get the access token. Proceed. Access token is now generated. So this is my access token, and I have the expiry is here. Let me open it up here. What happens after we do this one? This is what we will receive. We get the access token, expiry, and token type, scope, refresh token now. So we have the scope only for this two. Using this access token, you can only access this two, and some ID token is there, blah blah blah. Access URL is there, client ID, secret is there, and most important, you have refresh token and access token. It expires in 3600 seconds. How long is it? 3600 seconds divided by 60 means 1 hour. Very good. So after 1 hour, the access token will be invalid, and refresh token will be sent back, and new access token will be automatically generated. You don't need to go to the user and ask him for his username, password. So use token. So now the token is added. If I now try to add a new request, let's say get name, and in the authorization I will say OAuth 2, and OAuth 2, there are several available tokens. I will take the demo token. So this is the token that I have. Save it, and now I need to call a URL from where I will be accessing something. Let us just go ahead and find out what is the URL that we need, that basically the API endpoints. Let me open up the browser. If you remembered something when we are setting up the consent page, and when we are looking into this scopes available, let me go to the next page. These two are not related to any IDs, like any API. So there will be API explorers available, but the problem is both of these two are not associated with any API. Like if you want to get some information about your Google Drive, yes, there will be a Google Drive API explorer from where you can fetch that. But the problem with the first two is that these two are not associated with any other APIs. So I will show that shortly, but before that, if you are using a Google Drive API or YouTube API, you want to explore that, go for Google API Explorer. Search for something and open it up. So this is your Google Explorer, and inside which you can open up any API that you want. For instance, if you are discussing about Drive API, let's search for Drive, and Drive version 3 API or YouTube API or whatever it is. It will give you all the URLs that are required. If you could see here, this is your base URL, and then after that, if you put slash and above, slash and about, then you will be getting the information about the user's drive system capabilities. You can do the same for getting the changes and making some changes, and getting the comments or creating the files, and all those things you can do, but you need to do some trial and error process. You need to play with them to understand how it is set up. But in our demo here in this video, we are not focusing on all these things. We are only focusing on the basic identity. So the basic identity, as I have said before, this one is not available or associated with any of the APIs. But what we can do, this is associated with OAuth 2. So this is the normal procedure. So I will just go ahead and where is my this one here? Copy this. But just don't try to use this one because it will not work. If I try to give this, it will just give me the same name. After the OAuth, remove it. So we are looking into user info, right? So after the OAuth, remove it and say OAuth 2 version 1 user info, like version 1 or version 2, whatever it is, send it and it will give you the response. So the response is the current logged in user is mouse events, and email is verified, and name is this, given name is this, and picture is this, language is English, and this is the ID. So that's it. So we have now successfully verified our account using this one. This is how we will be doing it. In case we are trying to access Drive API or something else, we will be returned back with a denied error because we don't have those scopes associated with us. But for most of our application, for just a third-party login, this is more than enough. You will be returned back with an ID, and you will be returned back with a email ID. So both you can use to ensure that the user is a valid user who has logged in.